Alright, another note-specific video for you guys today, and today we're talking about cypress in fragrances. This is an amazing tree, and they use this note in fragrances. Tends to go kind of woody, but definitely kind of green and earthy, a little ozonic, and also a little grassy. It has a fairly interesting smell, and I enjoy this note in fragrances, and I've been wanting to put together a video for you guys, and today it is it. I've got 15 cypress fragrances for you guys, and this is a video of cypress fragrances that feature this note dominantly. I try to put together videos of note-specific fragrances and make sure that the fragrances feature this note, or the note that I'm speaking about in that video, prominently or dominantly. So today, find out about 15 cypress fragrances coming right up. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian. Yes, we're talking about cypress finally on the channel. I've been wanting to do this video for a while. You know, sometimes I think of video ideas for specific notes and I forget about them, and you guys have been asking me to do a cypress fragrance video, and that's what I'm doing today. And I enjoy cypress in fragrances, and cypress tends to go masculine. All the cypress fragrances tends to go masculine, and to me there's not a lot of fragrances out there that are cypress focused, and that's why I was also waiting to find a big batch of, or a big collection of cypress focused fragrances, and that's what I'm doing for you today. And I enjoy cypress as a smell. The tree itself is not as fragrant as something like eucalyptus or pine, but it does have a smell, and it smells really, really nice in fragrances. Of course, I really enjoy the smell, and I grew up in the Mediterranean. There's that very tall, long type of cypress trees that are familiar or recognizable in the Mediterranean, especially in Tuscany, where you see the wineries and where the wineries are, and you see these paths of cypress trees. And then we have those cypress trees, our kinds of cypress trees here as well, along the coast in Northern California near Monterey, where the lone cypress is. So yeah, cypress is a great note, and I'm going to talk to you about all of the cypress fragrances today. Before I get to the fragrances though, if this is your first time tuning into my channel and you haven't subscribed, please do click the subscribe button below, and also click the bell so you'll be notified for future videos and giveaways. Let's go ahead and start. This is the first fragrance at number 15. This is Blue Cypress. Blue Cypress is from the house of Goldfield and Banks, and Goldfield and Banks does some great fragrances. This is not one of their more popular fragrances, but definitely a fresher take on cypress. They feature blue cypress, lavender, patchouli, clove, and star anise. The combination is really, really great. This is a very unisex take on a cypress fragrance, but as I was saying, it does lean as a note very masculine to me. The fragrances with this particular note do lean masculine, but you can experience the patchouli, you can experience the lavender. It's very aromatic. There's a spiciness about it, not necessarily going into the Christmas spicy direction with this one, because you know, cloves tend to do that. It's not as that, but you can definitely experience the spice in here. And then of course you can also experience the star anise. There's definitely like a little licoricey touch in there, which also for me, anytime I experience star anise or licorice, there's definitely a little booziness about the fragrance as well. So that's what Blue Cypress is all about. It'd be a great fresh wearing experience for a cypress focused fragrance. Moving on to the house of Molten Brown. This is Coastal Cypress and Sea Fennel. To me, this smells like the cypress kind of a smell that's associated with Northern California here, especially if you go down to the Monterey, California region, where it's beautiful, beautiful, and you see those cypress trees against the water, the ocean, and you can get the smell of the trees and the earthiness and the ozonic touches that cypress has qualities and, you know, smells of, and then you can get the sea breeze at the same time, so there's a little bit of a fishy marine sea air and the earth, the woodiness and the greenness from the cypress tree. But this is Coastal Cypress and Sea Fennel. I'm featuring the EDT here. There's definitely an eau de parfum. Features notes of cypress, sea notes, cardamom, fig leaf, violet leaves, cedar, and musk. Perfect type of notes connected together. The fig leaf adds a little green bitterness to the fragrance, and also I feel like cypress definitely has that kind of earthy bitterness as well. But here we got the violet leaves to throw in an ozonic kind of watery experience, and of course with the the C notes, it creates a very watery kind of an experience here with a little bit of C and a little bit of water. But there's the cedar note here, there's musk, and definitely some pungency from cardamom. It's a great wear. If you like it denser, go for the EDP. If you like it fresher, go for the EDT. And I think EDT is a perfect all year round fragrance, and you can totally spray plenty of the EDT in the summertime. So it's Coastal Cypress and Sea Fennel from the house of Molten Brown. Next fragrance, going to the house, the indie house of INEKE, a San Francisco Bay Area brand. This is IDYLLWILD. And this time we're definitely going into the masculine direction and a little bit of a barbershop-y fougere direction. This is an aromatic fougere fragrance, and it features loads of cypress. It's actually named after a California town. So it's got a lot of green cypress and then also pine and aromatics thrown in, kind of like a forest smell experience. So if you like the idea of forest trees like pine, cypress, and throw in with aromatics, the herbs that are associated with, you know, fougere fragrances, this is definitely the type of fragrance you should check out. Loads of cypress here with rhubarb. It throws in a little bit of a fruity vegetal touch. And then there's the fir note, the grapefruit, tea, lavender, artemisia, woods, cardamom, oud, and musk. Artemisia throws in a little bit of a green boozy spiciness. Tea has this coziness. The lavender is definitely the note that's associated with, you know, aromatic fougere fragrances. And then of course the grapefruit along with the rhubarb adds a kind of fruity zing, a little vegetal quality to the fragrance, contrasted with the, you know, the prominent cypress note here. So it's IDYLLWILD. Check that out if you don't know it. It's a great scent. Next, going to the house of Chanel from their Les Eaux collection of fragrances. This came out last year, and I feel like this is the most masculine fragrance in the Les Eaux collection, which are unisex targeted. This is Paris Edinburgh. I've been trying to get my nose on Paris, which I hear is definitely feminine leaning, but Paris Edinburgh is definitely the masculine leaning in that bunch. There's 5 or 6 fragrances in the collection now. Paris Edinburgh features cypress with juniper berry, vetiver. This is what notes they credit, but I also get citruses here. It's very, very fresh. There's definitely fresh woodiness here, kind of like citruses with bergamot. Maybe there's some lemon, maybe there's some mandarin, some sweetness there. I get this. There's also like a herbal aromatic experience in here as well. I feel like there's geranium, which throws in a little bit of a minty rosiness, and then of course lavender for a little bit of an aromatic herbal sweetness. But the combination is great. It's a great everyday kind of a wear. Again, it's unisex, masculine leaning, but definitely very, very woody and earthy, and a little bit of green from the cypress note. So it's Paris Edinburgh from the house of Chanel. And next, moving on to another very big designer house, going to the house of Dior. This is Terra Bella from their Privé collection. So this, I've discovered that it's not on the USA website anymore, but it is on the French website. So I don't know if it's discontinued permanently. It's probably moved to their exclusives of their exclusive collection kind of a thing. But I think you can still find this in stores, and I believe last time I was at Neiman's they still had some. But this features notes of cypress, orange blossom, and myrtle, and the combination is very, very great. You've got that green, pungent kind of camphoric experience of the cypress tree note, but you've got lots of orange blossom to throw in kind of a citrus floral experience against the cypress note. And then you've got this unique note of myrtle. Myrtle is a great note. I grew up with myrtle flowers. My parents had this house. We had a rooftop garden, and we planted these myrtle trees, and I could smell the flowers all the time. And it doesn't come up too often, and it's really, really prominent nicely here, and it smells really, really great because myrtle has a kind of a herbal floral experience, and I like that about this a particular flower, and it's definitely really, really prominent here in this particular fragrance. Definitely easy wear, but you have the woodiness, the earthiness, the greenness of the cypress, the citrusy touches, and then of course the herbal kind of aromatic floral touches of the myrtle. This is Terra Bella. Check that out. I think it's definitely a great scent. And then moving on to the house of TIZIANA TERENZI. This is SIENE, this one right here. So this is a very complex fragrance, and also very, very deep, rich, and woody. Very, very intense with leather. There's lots of leather here along with cypress, loads of cypress. So it's a leathery cypress kind of an experience. You do have that little bit of a Tuscan leather kind of reminder in the background. There is that in there. So this definitely very masculine leaning among all the fragrances I've discussed with you today. So it's lots of leather with cypress. There's juniper, there's incense, patchouli, there's some sweetness from honey, there's iris, myrrh, sandalwood, and amber. So eventually it becomes an ambery experience, very, very woody, but you have lots of leather here. So it's kind of like a taking Tuscan leather, going into more of that cypress kind of an experience, aromatic experience with spiciness, and of course incense, patchouli. So it's a great fragrance. It's very, very intense and long lasting. TIZIANA TERENZI SIENE, number 10, a great cypress fragrance. Moving on to the house of LALIQUE, I've got to feature this fragrance, and even though it's known for Vetiver, it's lots of cypress as well. It's Encre Noire a la Extreme. I'm featuring the a la Extreme version. You can always, get the original version, which is very, very inexpensive online. You can get it for like 28 bucks for 100 ml. I find this version to be a little more interesting. It's got some complexity and also a little bit more of a reminder of Chanel Sycamore. I left off Chanel Sycamore because I already featured a Chanel fragrance in this video, Paris Edinburgh. I feel like that has a little more of a substance, or presence is what I should say, presence of cypress. The Chanel Sycamore is more vetiver. Here you do experience a very similar kind of an experience, but I get more cypress with this one more than the Chanel Sycamore. But the Encre Noire a la Extreme is also very, very inexpensive, just like the Encre Noire, which is, as I said, 28 bucks approximately, 28.30. This one can be had for under 35 bucks for 100 ml. So if you're looking for kind of a very masculine vetiver cypress kind of a combo fragrance, definitely try it. But in addition to the vetiver and cypress, you've got elemi here, some smokiness from incense. There's orris for some powderiness, some creamy butteriness from the iris orris note, along with benzoin, sandalwood, and patchouli. A great smelling fragrance. It's a great cheapie. And if you're new to the world of fragrances, especially niche fragrances or fragrances that you can't find at the department store, definitely, get one of these because it's a great fragrance to have. It's dark, it's woody, it's masculine, and definitely loads of vetiver and cypress with this one. So Encre Noire a la Extreme at number 9. But moving on to the house of Acqua di Parma, this is Cipresso di Toscana. So I did a video of this comparing it to another cypress fragrance, which actually is discontinued. I was going to highlight it, but I decided to leave it off. It's from the house of Bottega Veneta from their Parco Palladiano collection. If you were curious to watch that video, go catch it. But this to me, so authentic with the smell of cypress. It's almost like a fresh take, like you're near the cypress tree, you smell it, but it's freshened up with some kind of like a fan or some wind, like cool breeze blowing at the same time, because this is a very, very fresh fragrance, but loads of cypress here. It's created by Bertrand Duchaufour. I really enjoy his fragrances. They're very, very complex takes on fragrances. Lots of cypress with pine, rosemary, lavender, basil, vetiver, oak moss, cedar, coriander, sage, grapefruit. It's a great, great smelling fragrance. It's very, very fresh and herbal, very, very aromatic, and very, very woody and green at the same time. I love this one. Cypress is king here. It's Cipresso di Toscana from the house of Acqua di Parma. Check that out if you don't know it. Moving on to the house of Comme des Garçons, this is Monocle series fragrance Hinoki, and Hinoki is a Japanese cypress, and this is definitely a great example of cypress in a fragrance. Lots of it. There's cypress here, camphor, cedar, thyme, pine, Georgie wood, incense, tree moss, and vetiver. This one kind of reminds me of Aesop's Huile, which we're going to get to in a little bit, but this one seems a little fresher and a little, I don't know. Well, Huile seems a lot darker than this one, so I think the freshness here definitely kind of brightens up the fragrance, but they do have kind of similar qualities to me, and I quite enjoy this particular series of fragrances. I don't know if you guys know this one. I think it's pretty popular. A lot of people do seem to like this one. Hinoki from Comme des Garçons Monocle series. I think there's 4 or 5 in that collection of fragrances, so check that out if you don't know it. And I can't forget this particular fragrance from the house of Tom Ford. It's Costa Azzurra Parfum. So this is a great version of this particular fragrance. I was a really big fan of the Aqua version. I wore quite a bit of that. The Eau de Parfum version that came out in the previous version of this, which was a relaunch that they moved from Private Blend to this collection, I liked it, but I kind of like this version a little more. I don't know why, but the cypress is definitely king here, and you can smell the cypress fully. Because, it does have this kind of like herbal, bitter, kind of green quality to it, but a lot more pungent, and it's quite intensified in this particular fragrance. So there's lots of cypress here along with oak. There's also lemons, there's labdanum and amber. So eventually it's a woody, kind of an ambery experience with this kind of freshness, the brightness from from lemons that's in here. I think it's a great, great fragrance. This version is really, really great. I do enjoy it, and it does have some great legs. It has a lasting power, and I think they did a good job with the Parfum version in comparison to the Eau de Parfum. The Eau de Parfum is okay. It's also suggested retail. They're about 15-20 bucks different. So if you're gonna get the Parfum, why not get the if you're gonna get the Eau de Parfum, why not get the Parfum for about 15 bucks more? So Costa Azura Parfum from the house of Tom Ford. Now we're talking about Huile from the house of Aesop, this one right here. So Aesop has got a very big cult following. Like, a lot of people seem to love this house, not only for their skincare, but their kind of very minimalistic looking fragrances in their bottles. And I think Huile is their most popular fragrance. But this one, as I said, in comparison to the Comme des Garçons Hinoki, and even though this is kind of like a take on Hinoki, they're using Cypress with frankincense, there's Vetiver, there's spices and greens. It's a great smelling fragrance, kind of a dark take on Cypress and a smoky take on Cypress as well. And I feel like Cypress and incense or frankincense do really blend beautifully together. They complement one another and to create a beautiful, beautiful fragrance. It is pricey. This is a very pricey fragrance because these are all 50 ml bottles. But I think if you have the money and you like this kind of a fragrance, definitely check it out. In the background, there's lots of greens. I do pick up some greenness, and it almost seems like there's the DNA of a lot of other fragrances from the house of Aesop. I've got videos on the channel of this house, the fragrances from this house, so go check those out if you feel like. But definitely Aesop Huile is at number 5. Moving on to the house of Atelier des Ors, it's L'Armée du Desert, this one right here. I actually just dropped this bottle and I was so scared. It didn't break, thankfully, because I dropped another one of these bottles recently. It did break. This time it didn't. Oh my god, I was so scared because I picked up the box and it had a loose bottom and then it just slipped through. And luckily it fell on my foot, so it didn't really crash on the ground. So it kind of bounced on my shoe. But this is a great smelling, kind of ambery take on Cypress, along with incense frankincense thing once again. It's kind of a very golden experience because you've got lots of benzoin to sweeten things up here along with the Cypress. And then of course there's the incense here, there's woods, there's Gaiac wood, there's cedar, there's amber, there's citruses and patchouli. But it's a beautiful, beautiful fragrance. It's a little smoky, a little dark, but it's brightened up with the benzoin notes. So they're using benzoin to sweeten this particular fragrance out. It's a resin, it's a sweet resin, kind of vanillic, and I hear from you guys, I don't like vanilla, but I love benzoin. So if you like the idea of benzoin and a little bit of a churchy kind of smelling, because there's definitely kind of a incensey kind of a churchy experience here, then definitely check out L'Armée du Desert from the house of Atelier des Ors. It's a great fragrance, and that's at number 4. But at number 3, kind of a similar fragrance, but more darker, more resinous, more churchy. Going to the house of Jovoy, it's La Liturgie des Ors, this one right here. Oh man, this is so good. This is definitely cypress trees, lots of them. And in the middle of these cypress trees, there's a church with a church service. It's nighttime. It's a little cool out there, a little frosty, and you can smell the, the incense kind of doing the priests doing the thing, and the smoke is kind of rising, and you're smelling not only the cypress trees, but you're smelling the incense as well. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous fragrance. One of the more underrated ones from this house, but I don't think it's that underrated. There's definitely a following for La Liturgie des Ors, but lots of cypress with incense. There's olibanum, there's myrrh, there's labdanum, and there's some green notes thrown in. So it does get ambery in the dry down, but lots of cypress and incense together. It's a great smelling fragrance. It's La Liturgie des Ors from the house of Jovoy. If you don't know that one, do check it out. It doesn't get the big hype that like Psychedelique, Private Label, and Remember Me, and then also Incident Diplomatique gets, but I think that's definitely like a top 5 in popularity for people out there. Okay, moving on to number 2, going to the house of Raja Parfums, it's Apex. So this is the only real masculine targeted fragrance in this collection. There might be one more, but this is definitely for men. It's a male targeted release, and this is To Die For Delicious. Yes, it is reminding me a lot of Halston Z14, and because of this, I am wowed by this particular fragrance because current formulation of Halston Z14 is weak as heck. I don't like it. It doesn't smell great, and Revlon has done really, really bad reformulation or formulation for the latest version of Halston Z14. Halston fragrances are currently under Revlon, but here we've got this kind of very robust take on like something like Z14 with lots of cypress. Halston Z14 did have cypress. Also, there's Tom Ford's Italian Cypress, which also reminded me of Halston Z14 Italian Cypress. Lots of cypress here, along with balsam fir, leather. There's orange, there's patchouli, ambergris, tobacco, and moss. It's so good. So good. I love it. It takes me back to the early days when I first discovered Halston Z14 from when my dad used to wear it, my uncle. Anyway, it's Raja Parfums Apex, a great smelling fragrance. And then my number one favorite Cypress fragrance is from the house of Gucci, The Last Day of Summer. It's from the Alchemist Garden collection. This is so good, guys. Really great. I have a full review of this on the channel, which I shot and aired on The Last Day of Summer like 3 years ago. And it's Cypress to the max with lots of woods here. This one definitely in this collection does lean a little masculine, and I think you'll like it if you try it. It's cypress, patchouli, cedar, vetiver, and nutmeg. So it's lots of woods. There's earthiness here. There's some greenness. There's lots of spice. And then of course this kind of unique cypress woody experience with its light herbal kind of aromatic camphoric woody greenness. That's a great smelling fragrance, The Last Day of Summer. Alberto Morillas did a great job on this one and I absolutely love it. It smells really great and I love that fragrance from the house of Gucci as my number one favorite Cypress fragrance. That's the list of fragrances, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video with all these fragrances. Are you a fan of this note? Are you a fan of these fragrances? Do you have a favorite Cypress fragrance that I did not speak about today? Can you put a comment down so I can find out what it is? This is definitely a list of great ones. There were a few more, but they didn't have a full Cypress presence. They were more like secondary notes, as I was saying earlier, but definitely a great list of Cypress fragrances for you guys to come back to look into, you know, potentially getting these fragrances if you are digging this particular note. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching today's video. If you have any questions or comments, please do list below. Please like this video. Please share it. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye. And I'm going to end the video with this fragrance. I recently reviewed it last week, I think is when I reviewed this. This is from the house of Xerjoff. It's a Xerjoff's sketchbook collection fragrance, P33. Lots of cypress in this one. Loads of it. It does have that kind of fresh experience though with lots of citruses here. It's loads of bergamot with grapefruit. And there's also this fruitiness with the apples. There's cinnamon, cedarwood, pink pepper, musk, and amber. But it definitely has a powdery experience and a major cypress presence. If you like the idea of cypress, but not kind of a watered down kind of a take on cypress, because you do pick up the cypress here, but it doesn't have all of its cypress glories. Like it doesn't have this kind of bitterness. There is a little bitterness, but I think the fruitiness kind of tones it down in here, the bitterness from the cypress note. But in the background you'll definitely notice the cypress, and it's definitely present here. I also have said in the review for this one last week, it did remind me a little bit of Decas, but this is definitely ambery. It settles to an ambery experience, but not as ambery as Decas. So that's my bonus suggestion. It's sketchbook collection P33 from the house of Xerjoff, and that is the last fragrance I'm talking about today. Thanks so much for tuning in, and stay tuned for another video very soon. Bye bye.